Thanks for joining us. I'm Nancy Furness, and this is We've Got Issues. We're filming on site at MLA Rick Glumac's office in Port Moody, and we are on the ancestral and stolen lands of the Coquitlam, Stolo, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, Cathcart, Kwantlen, and Katzie nations. Today, I'm joined by David Cathcart, who is the minister at Trinity United Church in Port Coquitlam. So thank you so much for joining us today. And may I call you David?
Yes, that's just fine.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's getting to be a busy time of the year. And what I'm hoping that you can share with us today is an announcement that your church, Trinity United Church, is undertaking a project to help put in some social housing. And if you could start by telling us why, like what was the inspiration? What inspired you to do this?
So it's our hope and our dream to develop some affordable housing in Port Coquitlam. And it's always been on the table for Trinity United Church. They've served Port Coquitlam for 120 years this year. And every purchase of land that they made, they've moved, they've been in several different locations over time, has been investing in the land and making sure that it would be able to be developed at some point, because they always had an eye to folks who were vulnerable in the community. So in 1994, we developed with BC Housing the property behind us, Stewart House. And it's always been on the table to develop again, and now is definitely the time that the need is so great. We have a lot of partnerships with Share, who provides a food bank in the space. We've worked with BC Housing and Progressive to provide winter shelters for decades now, and we're very, very aware of how increased the need has become. And so now is the time for us to do some development and provide more housing.
Right, and I had no idea that this was a long-term vision, so that's really good to hear. And is the congregation, are they very supportive of this as well?
They're supportive and grieving. We love our building, and you know, some of them only remember the building that is. But we also know that our purpose is to support the community and provide what the community needs.
As part of your vision, you were saying that you're following in the footsteps of some other churches that have done the same. Can you give us an example of another church, maybe one locally, that has put in the housing and how it's going for them?
So I can't speak to how it's going for them.
Okay.
But I do know that just down the street here, what used to be St. Andrew's United Church is now Inlet United Church. They did an amalgamation with another United Church congregation as well, and built a number of units of affordable housing. They did that in partnership with Kinsight and Catalyst Development. And so that just opened about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. Up on top of the hill, Como Lake United Church opened, I think they opened 1 year ago now. And they were in partnership with the PMRC, that's the Pacific Mountain region of the United Church. Oh. And BC Housing also supported that housing. There's First United Church in downtown Vancouver on the corner of Hastings and Gore, that has just recently torn down their building to redevelop into, I think, 8 stories of affordable housing.
Can you give us a little bit of a vision as to what the buildings will look like? You said that some folks are grieving the loss of the church. Will the church be incorporated into the new project? Or can you just tell us what it's going to look like as far as the buildings on the property?
So we have no idea what it'll look like in reality. What we have at the moment is an L-shaped box that the new building will occupy. So we hope 6 stories for the whole thing, and we would occupy one wing, perhaps 2 stories of it, for both a church and a service hub. We want to provide services for folks who are at risk of becoming homeless, underhoused, or who need supports to remain housed. And we're hoping to find a partner that will run services out of the space.
And when you talk about services, what types of services, can you give us some examples of what you mean?
So we find, Tri-Cities has a real lack of services at the moment for folks who are unhoused. And even for people who are housed but need support. So not all of us are equipped to be able to pay bills and manage insurance and all of that kind of thing, and even get the rent paid every month. Even if they have the resource, the money, they can't get the bills paid. They need somebody to help them with that kind of thing. So we would provide those kinds of social services. Services where people are actually working with people who are living rough, who are living on the street, in order to help them access the resources they need, whether that's rehabilitation resources or simply bridging the gap. There's so many people who are working, but who can't afford rent right now.
Right.
And so our shelter is
slipping through the cracks.
It's not even cracks, like it's a systemic issue across the country.
Crevassed. Yes,
that housing
yes.
is not affordable, and people making $80,000 a year who can't afford housing. And so certainly people who are making $10,000 a year can't afford housing, and it doesn't matter how many times we tear down tent villages, they still can't afford the rent.
Right, it doesn't solve the problem.
It doesn't solve the problem. They still have a place they need to be. They also need a place to go to the bathroom and have a shower. They need a locker so they can lock up their things and not be dragging them around.
Just the basic
everywhere.
human
basic
needs.
Things.
Yes.
If they have an interview, they need to be able to get access to decent clothing and to be able to have an interview on a computer in a quiet space where they're not going to be disturbed. So we would like to provide those kinds of services for folks.
No, it sounds wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit more about the folks that would be eligible to come in? Are these, you've talked about people who are unhoused and people who are maybe struggling to make ends meet. Are there any eligibility requirements, or is it fairly low barrier?
So we don't know yet. I think one of my goals is a lower barrier for housing, but until we have partners and we know what their goals are going to be as well. We currently have seniors housing and mixed housing associated with the church already.
On the church property?
On the church property, right behind us. We also have a seniors development that's downtown Port Coquitlam that is managed by a group of people from the church. But kids who are aging out of foster care can't afford housing.
They're very vulnerable.
They're very vulnerable, and so that's a large group that needs support. Seniors need support. People who are new to Canada need support. We've been sponsoring refugees, and once we get them here, it's a bit ridiculous how much we're supposed to have put away to be able to sponsor refugee families. But then when they get here, what we have to put away for them isn't enough. It just isn't enough. Not with rents being as high as they are in this part of the world, and they end up living away up hills where they have no access to anything. So any number of groups that would be good. We could build anywhere on the market and make a difference.
Well, and I think it sounds like what you're doing is not just taking people off the street or just housing refugees. You're actually building a community.
Well, that would be our hope. And diversity is always my preference. Mixed housing is always my preference, so that we're not just creating a conclave of one type of
demographic,
or one demographic. That's right. Yeah, we want as mixed as we could get, I think.
And then right now, I think there's a daycare on site. You host like
we have a preschool,
preschool and Poco Garden Club, and there's housing, you said, already on site. What's going to happen to those? Will they stay there, or?
So lots of negotiating is in our future, so that the housing that's already there won't be touched. It will remain as it is, and we'll be protecting the laneway around the church. So there's a laneway through our property. That will remain as it is. And then we need to do lots of negotiating with the other groups that are in the building. We sponsor, we have, I can't remember the most recent count, but there's about 16, 17 groups that use the space for one thing or another, whether it's 12-step groups or the Poco Gardening Club or right now, Choral Connections is singing in our sanctuary, and we have lots of groups. So at least for a time, they'll need to find somewhere else. Well, when we're under construction, they would find somewhere else. But then we would need to know, how we're going to fit back together again.
Mm-hmm. And when you say partners, are you talking about developers or financial partners?
Good question. Yeah, there's all of the above we're looking for. We're really looking for financial partners because we have the equity in the land, and that's the equity that we thought.
That's a huge
It's a big
first
piece.
step.
It's a big piece, but with the cost of development being what the cost of development is, it doesn't actually provide us with our own space at the end. So yeah, we're looking for financial partners predominantly who could pay off a lease from the space that we're providing. We're looking at around 90 units, 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and studio.
Oh, wow.
So there's a good spectrum of what we hope we're going to be able to provide, as well as our own worship space and service hub.
So David, I was wondering, are you getting any financial assistance or support from the government, either federal or provincial or anyone else?
So a small grant from Van City has gotten us started in our research and with a development consultant. And we're now applying to BC Housing and CMHC and other sources through the government just to get us to getting in the ground. And then eventually our hope is that BC Housing will probably fund the larger portion.
My other question is green space. Sorry, that's a personal passion of mine.
We're on the river, and so we back onto the river. The whole property backs onto the river, and yes, absolutely, we need green space. We're hoping, so we still have to build 6 meters from the edge of the road. Right, so I'm hoping we'll be surrounded by a community garden.
I was going to ask you about a community garden.
Yeah, that would be my hope, is that we can put in, lighting and everything makes a big difference with community gardens, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to surround ourselves with a community garden.
Trees.
Well, there are some big trees that we will not fight hard to keep because of where they are, and they're at risk already with power lines going through them, and. But like we're right on the river. The river's right there for us, which is one of the reasons why the homeless community is with us. It's because we're so close to resources for them.
Well, it's good to hear a community garden might be part of that, because food security even, and just
it's huge. It's the other part of the 3 pieces are income, housing, and food security. Those need to be our focus.
Right. Now, the big question is, when do you anticipate this will happen, or is that just, I know it depends on a lot of things.
It depends, yeah, it depends on so much. If everything lined up perfectly, 3 to 4 years to get into the ground, and then a 2-year build. I think we're probably closer to 7 years to moving into the new site. My ideal would be that we'll be celebrating 125 years in 5 years' time. Wouldn't it be great if we could celebrate 125 beds in 125 years?
That would be amazing. That would be wonderful. And I just really want to thank you for coming in and sharing that with us. It's wonderful to see that this community housing is being planned, and to know a little bit more about what your future holds. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. I've been talking to David Cathcart, who is the minister of Trinity United Church in Port Coquitlam, and he has just been sharing with us some information about a community housing project that is going on the Trinity United Church lands. Thank you.